You know, there's a lot of times where I come to the Bible and I'll use my seminary training. Like, oh, I know what to do. But sometimes I'm just confounded and I don't know what I'm reading. And I think that's okay. Yeah. I think that's okay. So in today's episode, we want to explore that. What does it look like when you don't fully understand? I know you feel that way. I felt that way. Let's vibe.
Today's episode is brought to you by Logos. Learn more about the world's best Bible study software at logos.com/themove. Today we're going to be looking at John chapter 2, verses 1 through 12.
As always, the question is, have you read it? If you haven't, it's in the description below. And we will start the timer 10 minutes in 3, 2, 1, go.
We were talking off camera. We were sharing the reality that we don't always understand the Bible or why some things are in the Bible, because we sat down and we're like, man, this is a tough one.
Yeah, so this story has...
It's kind of weird.
Yeah, it's on the face of it, it's simple. Jesus doing this miracle.
Cool.
Where there isn't... The wine has run out. Jesus shows up.
Turns water into wine.
Really
cool. It's weird, though, because the entire purpose of John is to prove that Jesus is the actual coming of the Messiah. You go to the very end of John, he's like, these things were written so that you would believe. And then I believe, if the count is right, there's like 7 miracles that he talks about Jesus.
Yeah.
I think some people count them. So why is this included? What's so important about turning water into wine? And I wish that I had like the right answer, but part of the answer is like, man, I don't know.
Well, okay, one of the things that comes to mind is what you just mentioned. You said that at the end of the book, John says, I write these things so that you might believe.
Yeah, it's like, there's a whole bunch of other stories I could have told you, but these are the ones that I've included.
Yeah, because if I had written them, not all the books in the world couldn't fit them, right? Now, here's the question. Where is that found, where John says that? Do you know?
Like 20 something?
Yeah, it's actually found in John 20. If I remember right, you can go to John 20, and in John 20, there is this story of, well, at least John concludes this very thing that we're talking about, right? What is it? I'm going to scroll down here. Verse 30. Now, Jesus did many other signs in the presence of the disciples, which are not written in this book, but these are written so that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that by believing you might have life in his name. Book ends.
Cool.
Right? Except it doesn't.
Yeah, here you go. There's a 21.
There's a 21.
Post-credit scene.
Well, yeah, and it almost feels like an epilogue.
Okay.
Right? It feels like an epilogue. What's interesting about this epilogue is that John chapter 1 often feels like a prologue, and people call it a prologue, right?
Yeah.
So
this title scheme, in
the beginning, and then John chapter 21 is the end. Like, how does the Star Wars go again?
I'm not saying you just doing this.
No, I totally forget. I always go Superman.
Here's what we'll do: we'll play it right now, and you'll have to listen to the playback.
No, how does it go? It's like. I promise you, like,
everyone's like, Jonathan, how do you not know
I promise you, mine always goes to that's all I have. Yeah, Superman. So, see, I already lost it. Anyway, okay, fine. So, John chapter 21 it's an epilogue. Well, John chapter 1 is a prologue.
So, the book really begins and ends at 2 and 20.
Some would suggest, right, that like the meat of it starts in 2. Because 2 begins like the work.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It begins the work. And so then when you go to 2, well, first let me draw your attention to 21. That if you've watched our episode so far, you will see that in chapter 21, the elements that are there are the elements that are back in John chapter 1. Even to the disciples that are there. Even in John chapter 21, you have Peter having this moment of reckoning with Jesus again, where he's being reaffirmed in that which he was called to back in the prologue.
You are Cephas, Peter.
Right? So we'll get to that when we get to John chapter 21. But if John 1 and John 21 are prologue and epilogue, almost like if you know anything about Hebrew literature, this chiastic structure.
There's this like A and A at the end, B and B. It kind of goes in this
so there's
so there's relation between the ends and the beginning. We see this in the actual Bible. At the beginning, there's a garden. It ends with a garden, right?
So that what begins is what ends, and then it works its way inward, so that in the center you have the main point.
That's the meat. That's the main focus is right there in the middle, as if there's arrows pointing towards that that thing.
Yeah, so if you were to follow this chiastic structure where there's A and then at the end is A prime, and then you have B and B prime, now this is an if, right? This is an ask. But if B is this beginning work, well then, because this is the beginning of his work, this is the first of his miracles. What is the last of his miracles? Well, John chapter 20, resurrection, right? If he is first baptized in water, right? Where is it that wine comes up? It's his body and his blood at the end. Right? And you also see this in John chapter 4.
So I'm going to just jump us forward. So the point is that there's a relationship between miracle 1 and last miracle. Yeah. There's a relationship between the cross and this wedding event.
Yeah, but all of these, and all of these elements are there. Yeah, and so you have the water, the wine, you have the wedding event where you can't just rely on the old wine. You're going to need more. And Jesus coming to the party brings the new wine. Yeah. And that new wine tastes better than the old wine, old covenant, new covenant.
We see Jesus even alluding, my hour has not yet come. But then we see the hour being fulfilled at the cross.
Right? And then it's all of these elements. But I don't know how to put it all together. If this is what it is all together and all of these elements. I do know that the geography even, because John is intentional about the geography he uses, even Cana, right? Cana shows up 4 times in John, right? And one of the places it shows up is in John chapter 4. And it is when there's a nobleman who has a son in Cana, right? He's at Cana, and John makes a note of it saying, this is where Jesus actually performed the miracle of wine. What's fascinating is that in John chapter 4, it follows Jesus having spoken to the woman at the well where she wants water. So John is again very intentional. First, it starts with water and then wine. And what's the story? The water is this woman needs living water. But then in John chapter 4, the next story of wine is resurrection. So the nobleman's son is resurrected.
So there's this constant play between needing of water, and there's wine, and there's resurrection, all in the same place.
All in the same place. And this is in John chapter 2, seemingly, where the party was dying. He brought it to life. Water to wine. And then we didn't even start on the time, on the third day.
On the third day, that's right.
Right? Because what are some of the things you found on the day piece?
On the day piece?
Yeah. Remember we were just talking about
it. Yeah. So there's a debate between scholars that if you count up John chapter 1, he says, on this day, and then the next day, and then the next day. Basically, like, this is the only part in the book of John where he's so intentional about the counting of days. If you do the math, there's some debate on it, but the conclusion is that the new wine experience, this wedding experience, is actually happening on the 7th day.
Yeah. And then there are others that connect the third day to the third day when he resurrects, right? So he's emerging as new wine. So it seems as though this story is just pregnant with light, with death to life, water to wine, resurrection, the manifestation of the Son. And like all of these are his first signs that point to his greatest sign, right? And maybe that's the point, but this story has confounded me for years precisely because I'm like, So
let's do this with the 2 minutes that we got left, because there's a lot there that we could just go on. There's all these different things. Let's try and make it practical. What are some of the takeaways that we can get from this? For example, I'll say this one. When Jesus comes up, or when Mary comes up to Jesus and says, "Hey, what are we supposed to do?" Jesus is like, "What are you talking about? It's not my time yet." What does she say next? She says, "Do whatever he tells you." Yeah,
for me, the takeaway, and probably this is what if you do the book, right? Well, the takeaway for me is Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. Like this, I mean, you see, the whole story can only make sense around him doing what he's doing.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's all about him being revealed in power, his disciples believing on him using all of these elements to point to say, hey, the point of all of this is me, right?
Yeah.
That's where I land.
The attention keeps getting drawn back to him.
Yeah. That he is the way, the truth, and the life. Right? Is that John 14:6?
Yeah. Oh. I don't know.
I'm the way, the truth, and life. Nobody comes to the Father except through me. I think
it's
John
right.
14. Yeah, that's where I land, honestly. And, because so many years you spend on like, is it right for a Christian to drink wine?
Well, if you go back to the original Greek.
All right. There wasn't a party where there wasn't the wine was fermented. They didn't have refrigeration. All right. Yeah, cool. But that's not the point.
Right. We do that. We miss the point a lot.
Right. For me, the point is that great song by Hillsong that, Jesus bring new wine out of me. Like he's bringing new wine out of us in resurrection.
In setting up for this, there's this piece where the jars in which they were holding the waters, there's evidence to suggest that these are the very jars that are used for ritualistic cleansing.
Yeah.
This idea that, hey, there's this old system of cleansing that's here, that's present, that's been so important. And even in this moment, Jesus is substituting that for new wine. There's a new experience. There's a new way to relate to God. And the key is through resurrection, through Jesus.
Yeah, that's where I land. That's good. That was 10 minutes. That's 10 minutes. And that's what we mean by vibing with the book. We were just literally vibing. I mean, we studied this, wrestled with this. But all those elements are awesome.
They're super cool.
Great. They're super cool. But tell us what you think.
Let us know.
I would love to hear
below
what you think about John chapter 2, verses 1 through 12.
Hey movers, I recently got to travel to the Logos headquarters and ended up recording several tutorials on how you and I can get more from our Bible study using Logos. To see the entire playlist of videos, visit logos.com/themove and get 10% off any Logos 8 product you want. logos.com/themove.